Welcome everyone to CRM MVP podcast episode 92. We're getting close to episode 100. I have to come up with a good idea for episode 100. I don't know what to do. I was thinking about doing a giveaway when we hit 100,000 downloads, and I feel like it's gonna get close, like the 100,000 downloads and episode number 100. But we'll see. I have to think about an exciting and special episode today. Even though it's 92, it's pretty special because I have one of my, I guess, inspirations when it comes to solution architecture. There's only a handful of people in the world that I actually kind of respect when it comes from the real world experience when it comes to solution architecture, because Gustaf, and that's who I'm talking to, my guest this week. Gustaf, you didn't learn to be a solution architect by reading a book or watching YouTube videos, right? You just learn by doing, like me, pretty
Yeah,
much,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I did. Yeah, you're right. I started out as a developer, and then I got into working with the functional parts of the system, and then I grew from there. Right. So,
Nice. Yeah. And again, welcome to the show. I think this is,
thank you.
what is it, like third time that you've been on the show?
I think it's maybe the fifth time or something like that.
The
I don't.
fifth? All
Yeah,
right.
I
Yeah,
haven't. I've lost count.
you've been here a bunch of times, so thank you so much for joining me. And the reason why we're doing this episode is because I wanted to do a deep dive. And every time I do a deep dive, I try to stay away from what people can learn by just going to Microsoft Docs or whatever the training is these days, and just learning what Microsoft wants you to learn, and how everything works. I don't need to tell people the 5 different ways to do something. I want to tell them the ways that have worked for me and the way that has worked for other customers. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show, so you can talk about the way that works for you and your customers as well. Just real world experience, I guess, is what this is all about. And yeah, I want to let people know that this will be a deep dive into functionality in Dynamics, and talking about what can you do, what can't you do, and what's available. How would you use it, and essentially talk about how we use it. Make sense?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, this is something that you usually look for when you're working with a specific concept. You want to learn more about it, and you want to learn from people that actually use it, right? So
Exactly.
it's tricky. Reading something from Microsoft's usually a bit silly, and I'm currently working in a project right now, and they're working. We're looking at a piece of functionality from Microsoft, a specific module, and we're currently right now looking at, oh, maybe this it doesn't actually do this one critical piece of functionality that we want it to do. And then it's like, oh, maybe we've been working we've been looking at this for like half a year, and now we're figuring this out, so maybe we have to like back off from this entire module. And that's that's you don't want to learn that at like half a year into the project, right?
For
So
sure. And in this episode, we're talking about the product catalog. As I mentioned before, there are several moving parts when it comes to Dynamics CRM or Dynamics 365 that have been in the product for a long time. I think when it comes to sales specifically, the product catalog has been around forever, and for the longest time, it wasn't really enhanced or updated. A few years ago, I don't know if you remember when, Microsoft released some of the new functionality, which is like families and bundles and things like that, which we had been asking for, or customers have been asking for a while. But I can't remember when was the product catalog introduced. I feel like it's been there since I started working with Dynamics and CRM 3.0. I don't know. Do you remember?
yeah, I know. I think it's more or less always been there. I mean, I started working with it
Exactly.
in version 1.2. I don't. I did one project in 1.2. I don't
Hmm.
actually remember if it was there because I actually did an XRM implementation in 1.2. It's was a real hack,
Of
and
course.
so I actually didn't use the product catalog at that time. So I don't remember. I think you had orders at that time, so
Mhm.
I think it might actually have been there, but it was a very long time ago. So
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, again, it's been there forever, just like goals, for example, has been there forever. But like I mentioned, they have enhanced the product catalog a little bit, not a whole lot, but a little bit. So let's dive right into it. So the product catalog in Dynamics is essentially the functionality that allows you to essentially create or enter products, records, things that you sell as an organization, and allows you to add them into the sale record types like opportunities and orders and invoices and quotes. So if you are, I don't know, let's say Walmart, or a big, giant electronic store, and you're selling iPads and computers and stuff like that, all of those things will go into the product inventory or product catalog, as it's called in Dynamics. And all of the intricacies that come along with that. So if you think about a store, things like, are there any discounts? Are there any special sales prices or discounts for volume? Or how do you sell something? So you have items like, if you're thinking about, let's say, bottles of water, you can sell one bottle, you can sell a 6 pack, a 12 pack, you can sell a case, a pallet. I mean, there's so many different quantities. So if you think about all of those different features, and functionality that you would need to be able to sell product for any organization in the world. That's what the product catalog was aimed to do. It doesn't do it all. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's episode. Anything you want to add, Gustav?
Yeah, I think it's when you hear the word product, you might lock into the actual concept of a product, but the product catalog can also be used for services and stuff like that. So, I mean, for subscriptions and services, and if you want to sell things like that as well. So, I think you need to expand the scope of the actual word from the
Yes.
word product, so you realize that you can actually use it for subscriptions and other things as well. Like, so if you're selling something out, something more ethereal than a product, right? So
Right. Yeah. Like consulting, for example, hours of consulting or days of consulting or
yeah,
whatever it is.
or a phone or a phone subscription, right? So you can use it for that as well. It is a bit trickier to do that because a phone subscription might have like a start date and end date, and there's other things that are connected to it. But it is possible to do that as well. I have done it, so it is possible. Um,
Yeah, it is. It is tricky. And when you work with companies that have products that are, that are different. For example, one will be a one-time fee. So you're talking about a subscription, and one of the products will be a one-time activation fee or something, and then the other product will be like a monthly fee, like your actual plan and stuff like that. It can get pretty tricky when the products are so different, and one is an ongoing expense and the other one is a one-time thing.
Yes, exactly. And then, so yeah, it's true. One is they're actually called, when you're looking at them from like an ERP system or like finance and operations. One is called like a normal order, and the other, when they're coming to over to the order, and one is called a subscription order. So they're actually different
Mm.
types of orders when they're handled in those kinds of systems. So
Yeah.
they're actually different over there as well. So but you might have the same kind. They're actually, so from a product perspective, and they're also different in an order perspective. So
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the product catalog is for anything your company sells in terms of products and services and things like that. And it's actually available in multiple applications, not just the sales application, but also available from the customer service application and the field service application as well. And I guess you could create your own app with it, but you would be paying for that functionality, right,
yeah,
Gustav?
yeah, you're right, and you have to. It's only included in one of those three apps. So
Hmm.
if you want to create your own app, or if you're just buying like a power, if you're just having a per user power app, then you still have to pay one of these first party apps to be able to get access to the product catalog. Um,
Yeah. Or you would have to try to recreate it yourself. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to the product catalog. Obviously, you have the products themselves, which are the
yeah.
items that you will be selling and whatnot. But you also have unit groups, which are essentially how the product is available. So earlier I was mentioning water bottles, for example, having one or a pack or a 6 pack or a 24 pack, etc. Those are different units. Then you have price lists, which is the different prices that are available for those specific products. And you have also discount lists and families and products. But before we go into every one of those different moving parts, how do you use the product catalog from the other apps? Because I feel that the sales app is very simple. You create an opportunity at the five products the customer is, uh, I guess, interested on, and you move forward with your sale. But how do you use it, for example, from the customer service or the field service perspective?
Yeah, so in the customer service app, I think the main usage you have in the customer service app is by linking a case to a product, saying this case is actually for this specific product. And when somebody reports a case, and you have the problem is for that specific, well, a specific,
Yeah, that
hey,
printer,
the
that
printer or
whatever, that
something.
product.
Yeah, and that means that you can see that, oh, we're getting lots and lots of problems with a specific printer, for instance, which means that you then can see that, okay, that's, we need to do something about that, right? So
Sure.
and then you can also relate KB articles to that, um, which is good. And then there's also in sales something that maybe people don't realize as much, is that you can have sales literature connected to products, which is also useful. Which means that you can have yeah, well, like sales documentation, which used by salespeople connected to products. They can be
Yep.
that can be connected to either products or competitors. So that's useful as well. So meaning that you can have one version of the truth, which is very useful. Otherwise, if you have them in like SharePoint and or locally stored somewhere, which is typical for salespeople, they usually have multiple versions of the truth of these documents flowing around, and that's not very useful. So,
Yeah, for sure. And and I guess the other side of using them inside of the customer service side is that you can go back and look at all of the cases that were connected to a specific product, for example, especially if that product now has a newer version. And you can then use that information to reach out to customers who had problems with the old product and try to sell them a new one. So
mm.
you can even use information from the customer service side to sell on the sales side. So that's another way to use it. How about the field service side?
I think before the field service, there's another interesting aspect of doing of the from the customer service, and that's
Okay.
trying to do deflections, because what you typically want to do, if with the printer, for instance, if you have lots of problems, or if maybe if it's just like a usage thing that people don't understand how to restart it or something like that, or how do I use the scanning functionality of the printer, and they're calling your customer service all the time. Maybe you don't realize that, but if you have that connection to that printer, then maybe you can just add a new KB article to your website,
Yeah,
and then you can deflect a lot of those cases, which will alleviate your customer service and reduce the cost of your customer service, and that
for
is
sure.
very, very useful, of course.
Absolutely. And of course, we're not doing a deep dive on the customer service app, but also entitlements can be connected to products, which then means that if you
Yeah,
try to
yeah.
open a ticket for a product you didn't pay support for, then the case cannot be created. You're going to get a pop up that says, sorry, this product is not under support, get a support agreement in place or whatever. So there are several ways in which the customer service application connects to the product catalog. And it's cool to hear that they have, it's the same product catalog for both sales and customer service. So for a company that wants to use both, you don't have to have two families of products out there. It's one central location for all of it.
Yeah, exactly, and
What
that's
about,
that's very
yeah,
useful. Yeah.
what about field service?
So in field service, there's a very central entity there. It's called customer asset, and that's what do we have? What does a customer have installed at their location? That is might be a printer, for instance. So what is that printer? What product is that printer? So a customer asset is a specific printer, a specific serial number, uh, and
Yep.
that printer is a specific product that we have, that we've sold them, right? So that's the connection that you have to the product catalog, and then that printer might have different subcomponents, so that if you have send somebody out to fix the printer, you might want to replace a part of that printer because it's broken. Then you want to take a specific part of your from your product catalog and replace that. So you want to know that as well. So that's also a connection to that.
Yep.
And
You connect the products at the work order level where you say the parts that you need in order to fix the problem that the asset is having.
Yeah, and
Yep.
then that
Absolutely.
and then that's of course needs to be have a like a warehouse integration, and the warehouses in this case might be like the local the actual local warehouses, which might be the truck that the repair guy is driving, and he has that's actually a warehouse, and then you need to know the stock of that, and that's for connected to those products as well, and then that usually is integrated backwards to the ERP systems. So you
Yep.
know that, okay, so how much do I have, and then you can go if you need to go to buy some more something specific, you can manage that stock inventories. So
Yep, and I feel, when we look at Dynamics 365 and, since the CRM days, I feel that a lot of functionality in Dynamics, it's kind of broad, but at the same time is not all the way there. Like it's, and even Microsoft will tell you, for example, like even though Dynamics and the sales application specifically comes with quotes, orders, and invoices, don't use this as your accounting system. Like, yeah, we know we can do it, but don't. Like, and I feel like the product catalog suffers from that in some regards. But before we talk about the things that might be missing or why you should, you might look at somewhere else. Let's talk about some basic things. So, in addition to having the products or items or services that you sell, what are the things that must be connected? And this is the one thing that I dislike about working with a product catalog, is that there are so many other things that it's not easy for me to just enter like products and give them a price and call it a day. There's more stuff that you have to do. So we mentioned price lists, unit groups, and discount lists. Discount lists are the only optional one. The other two are required. Which one do you want to
but
talk
I
about
think,
first?
yeah, but when you talk about discount list, I think there's something important to talk about discount lists. A
For
very,
sure.
very common misconception about the discount lists, and I think that
Yes.
people think that discount lists are like, yeah, this is used for discount, like 10% discount for everybody who wants 10% discount. That's not the case.
No, that's what
They,
price lists are for.
yeah, that's what price lists are for. Exactly.
Yep.
Uh, because a discount list is a volume discount.
Hmm.
So if you want, like, okay, if you buy more than 10, a quantity of 10, then you get 10% discount. If you buy more than 100, then you get 20% discount. That's a
Correct.
discount list. So I think that's typically a very common misconception, and people think that should be using discount lists and so on. So I think actually it's quite, using price lists are very common, but using discount lists are not all that common. So I think that really need to understand the differences here
Yep.
between those two. And
But when you add a product to the product catalog, you have to add not only the name of the product and the unique ID and all of that, but you also have to include a unit and a unit group.
yes, of course.
Um, so how do we use those? What are unit and unit groups for?
So the units are, I mean, the unit, how are we selling this?
Yeah.
Is this sold as on by piece, like if you're selling like phones, they're sold by piece. But if you're selling um, let's say water from a tank, you're not selling that by piece, you're selling it by cubic meter or by gallons or something like that, depending
Right.
where you are. So I think it depends exactly on where you are, and or what type of product you're trying to sell. And if you're selling Office 365 licenses, you might be selling cows per month or something like that, or cells
Right.
per month. So it's totally different depending on what you're trying to sell. And I've seen people using the units of measure a bit differently, and
Mm.
or incorrectly, by saying, for instance, that you're selling Office 365 licenses each, which is very strange, because it's like, each of what? So
Yeah.
five of those. What's five? What is five? Five of what? Is
Five data centers or yeah.
Yeah, it's like, is it 5 months or is it 5 years?
Exactly.
Is it for five people, or is it for five companies? Or it's very unclear what you're actually buying. So I think that's,
Exactly.
and there's also a point of where you can, like, if you're buying one bottle of beer, you can buy a 6 pack of beer, or you can buy a entire what's it called, like a pellet of beer, or billet, or a
Yeah,
stack of
yeah.
it.
Like
Yeah,
like a case
yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is why those two are related, unit and unit groups. I think the easiest example for me is when I think about consulting. So unit groups will be, for example, time, and then the units themselves are hours, days, weeks,
Yeah,
months.
yeah,
Like that's what the units are for. But the group is time, and then you have quantity, which will be each or 6 pack or 12 pack or whatever. But that's what the quantity is for. And again, these are all customizable, but the problem with it is that, when I think about opportunities, for example, if you look at opportunities out of the box, they come wired up for quotes. They come wired up for you with a product catalog. They come wired up with a bunch of different functionality that in a lot of projects you quite frankly just remove. You don't use them. You say, look, I'm not going to use the product catalog in this project. I'm not going to use quotes in this project. You could do that. However, with the product catalog, you can't just choose not to use unit and unit groups. You
Mm.
have to use it. Um, it kind of reminds me of this story. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but it's about Walt Disney, and what Walt Disney has to do with CRM is interesting. But Walt Disney, back when he was opening Disneyland, which was the first park, I think it was opened in the 50s here in the US. He didn't have a whole lot of money. Like, they didn't have a park yet. They weren't making money like, they do today. So what he did is, when he was building Disneyland, he just didn't have money for landscape. So he had, in the land that he was building, he had all these weeds, which are, essentially the trees and bushes you don't want. Like, those are the ones that everybody kills and removes. And he doesn't have money to pay people to get rid of it. So what he did is he made signs with fake Latin names and put them on the weeds, so people think that they're part of the park. Like, oh wow, look, this is a cool weed from Sweden. And it was not. He just made it up because he didn't have money to get rid of them. So I feel unit groups and units, and in some cases price lists, are like weeds that we are forced to figure, like, add a Latin sign to it because we have to use it. There's no other choice in some cases, although in some other cases are very useful. So, if you're doing consulting, yeah, be able to sell by day and hour and all of that is cool. But in a lot of cases, they're just, you just name them like primary unit, and primary unit group, and you ignore them. All right.
So what would you like? Would you just like to have, like, because there's like a standard, the list price on the product? Would you just like to use that? Or how would
Yeah.
you
So
how would you, if you were to, if you could like design this any way you like, how would you like it?
Well, no, I think that the complexity should be there, but I wish we wouldn't force to use the complexity. That's the way I feel. I feel that, in the case entity, you have complexities. You have the knowledge base article, entitlements, and
Mm.
all of that. You can choose not to use all that stuff. You can hide it and not use it. But when it comes to the product catalog, you can't just use the product catalog without using units and unit groups and price lists and all of that. So if you sell something for one price, for example, even though at the product level there are some fields in there like cost and this and that, and it's a customizable entity, so I could add a field that says price and just have one thing in there. I mean, you do work with some companies that sell one thing that is the same price for everybody. They don't have any discounts or whatever. Like, it is what it is. So I'm just gonna, yeah, I just wish that it was more flexible. That's all.
Okay, well, I'm not sure I agree, because I think that maybe if you get into this area, you need to understand what this is about.
Well,
Uh,
for sure.
yeah.
For sure. But I think that making it super complex. So, like, if you're gonna have
But
one
is it?
price for everybody,
I mean,
if you don't have different types of customers, because, all right, let's get into price list, for example. So price list, the idea is you have one product that you could have with multiple different prices based on who you are. So if you are a gold customer, you get a price. If you are a, silver customer, you get another price or whatever. Or if you were, a warehouse or a big company buying versus a person walking off the street, that you'll sell it, same product for much higher price or whatever. Or if you're a government agency versus a private company, you may sell it differently, whatever it is. So
Mhm.
price list is multiple different prices for, the same product potentially. Or when you select the price list, you will only be able to see the products that you can sell to someone or a company that qualifies for that price list. So the point is, if you have products, like if you're a simple organization and you just have product, let's say you sell concrete, all right,
Mhm.
and the concrete, you sell it at the same price to anyone, whoever it is. It costs X amount per gallon, or however concrete is sold. You're forced to create price lists. You're forced to create price list items, which are the connection between a price list and a product. And that's where the price is. And you have to pick what kind of pricing model you're going to use. And, like, you have to go complex, even if your business is super simple. And I don't like that. That's the one thing that I'm not a big fan about the product catalog, even though I understand price lists. But I do agree with you. You should understand that. You should, you know,
You know what? I think it's actually, it's hard to make it complex enough,
yeah.
because I think I lack some features in the price lists that are rather common, but that it's rather hard to implement. Like, for
Hmm.
instance, indexing of pricing. So, for instance, in a price list, I would like to say, like, okay, so we're going to this price list is going to be to use um, this index principle for updating the prices every year at this time of the year.
Yes.
Um, that would be an awesome feature to have, because then we could
I know.
so we could, because then we could say, like, okay, we're going to update the prices whereby by 3% at the 1st of January every year.
That's right.
That would be like one model, a price updating model or something. Or in Sweden, there's like special external models that you should follow, and then you can have like an API which you like point to, and then say this is the pricing update model you should be using, and then it's
Yeah.
like, okay, use that. That would be very useful, because then because currently you have to update the prices, or you have to change price lists everywhere. So it's trickier. So there, that
It
might
is
be,
tricky.
yeah. So
And I mean, you guys are a CSP, right?
mm,
So if you look at the price list from Microsoft for CSPs, it's like a gazillion products in there, and it's a new price list every month. So, if you have a product catalog that changes constantly, it gets tough. You have to look into integrations and all of that. It's not as simple to use, I feel.
yeah, yeah. And then and some of our customers that we've been looking at, they have customer specific price lists, and maybe multiple customer specific price lists. And
Hmm.
then if you have like thousands of customers, that ends up being many price lists, and then have you change those price lists per year, and you need to have history. You want to have history for the old price list as well, so they keep the old price list. So you have like, oh, for the customer A price list for 2019, customer A price list for 2020, and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bit tricky.
Yeah, it gets complicated. And, when you're setting the price list and the price list item, which, as I mentioned, is the connection between the price list and the actual product, there are a couple of ways to do it, right? You don't have to specify just the price. You can also do, I think there's like three or four, and I'm going by memory. There's like three or four different things you can do. Do you remember them?
Yeah, the easiest way to use it is set the absolute price, just saying
Correct.
this is the price. The next one, there's two versions of setting a price based on a margin of the list price. So no, it's based on the list price, saying, so okay, I want it should be like 10% of the list of the
Or
price.
the cost, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, like
so the list
take the
price.
cost, and it will be 50% more for this price list, 40% more for that other one,
Yeah, yeah.
etc.
So one is based on the you do a percentage of the list price, and the other one is you do a percentage up from the cost. So
Yes.
you add from the cost. So there's those are the different versions of that. So there's two based on the pricing, and two based on the cost, because
Hmm.
there's two different fields for each of those. And of course, those are easier to use if you want to do calculations. But and then there's ways doing rounding. So how is it supposed to do rounding so you get a neat number for that? Um, and You also have to notice that each price list is dependent on a currency. So you can
Good
have
point.
you would have a price list that's a euro price list, or a US dollar price list, or a Swedish kroner price list. Those are then separate, and that's also a bit tricky, because I mean the you would have the list price would always be in the base currency. So that's also a bit interesting from that
Yep.
perspective.
I'm looking at. I just opened while you were talking about that. I looked at the price list item, and there's a field in there too for a quantity selling option, and it says that you can sell whole only, so you cannot sell
Mm.
5.5 iPhones. Whole and fractional, so you can specify if they can sell fractional whatever items as well as part of that price list, which is cool. I didn't even know this was there. I mean, this might be super old, and I didn't even know. It's one of those things that you leave it by default, and you don't mess with it. But
Yeah, but
you're right.
it is useful. Yeah, that part. The tough thing with price list item that I think
Hmm.
is worth noting, and that we've run into in a couple of projects, is that it's not customizable.
Yeah,
You can't change that entity, and sometimes you actually would like to would like to add a field or something like that to it, but you
for
can't.
sure. For
So
sure. And yeah, so I was looking at the pricing method, which is what you were talking about. There's actually six of them. So the currency amount is the easy one, is the one where you enter whatever is worth, so this item is $100. That's it. Then you have percent of list, a percent markup for the current cost, percent markup for the standard cost. Those are fields at the product level, and then percent margin for current cost and standard cost. So that is based on you updating the product, saying, now this product now costs me $80. So this, just do a percent markup of 20% or whatever.
okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you have all of those options there as well. Now you mentioned that the price list item is not a customizable entity. What are some of the limitations that you've seen with the product catalog? Because it's pretty broad. I mean, there's a lot you can do with it. Now, I have noticed in conversations with other MVPs and other people out there that you have some people that never use the product catalog. They're completely against it. It's too complicated, too restrictive. They immediately go for a custom solution. It seems like you and I are a lot more open to working with a product catalog in projects. Like if it makes sense and you're already paying for it, why pay for something extra? That's kind of how I approach this thing. But what are some of the limitations that you've noticed that you've been working with in your projects that you wish they weren't there?
I think generally the different components that you have on the um, or the controls that are on, for instance, order, on quote, and on opportunity, they are rather particular, and they are not that customizable. So they're made to make the user experience very very good for the normal use of the product catalog, with the integration towards the quotes, orders, and opportunities, for instance. However, that would be if you want, for instance, to start adding different columns to those controls. That starts being rather messy because you can't.
Yeah.
Um, and then if you start thinking like, okay, but I want to, um, I need to have I don't want to have just one product. I want to have a very large, very complicated product structure. And for instance, if I want to have one reason when I chose not to use it was when I did an integration with a product, an external product configurator as CPQ, and we had like the products were actually a product with with attributes, and each attribute had facets on them. So these were like name value lists of name with name value list with name value lists, and
Wow.
sort of like many levels on them, that they actually described what you had configured, and it was for a telco. So that was like, okay, but this is not good. This is to be able to implement that. I think it was actually for Serum 3 we did this, or Serum 4. Um,
Yikes.
so that had to be able to do that would have meant that we would have had to like use extreme violence with the product catalog. And there's one of the newer features that they introduced a couple of years ago was that you can override the built-in pricing for the quotes, the orders, and opportunities if you want to build your own pricing engine for that, for like
That's
this
true.
system pricing. However, you can at that the old in the older days that wasn't possible. So
No.
that now that when you can do that, it's a bit easier, but still you need to be, I mean, the point of using the product catalog is to actually use these features that we have for the price lists, units of measure, and the price list items, and all of that stuff, to actually calculate the prices.
Exactly.
If you get to a point where you're like, oh, but I can't, the pricing is so complicated, and I need to look this up in another system anyway to get the pricing, then it's like, oh, but why?
Right.
Why are we
What's the
even look?
point?
What's the point of having using the product catalog? So I think you need to sort of like look at the product catalog. Can you map at least like 70-80% of your functionality into that and get some usage out of it? Then it's like, then you have a point of it. But you really need
Yep.
to understand the product catalog. But if you try to map your functionality into it and get like, oh, well, maybe we can get 15% functionality out of this, it's like,
No.
don't use it. Try maybe you
Yeah.
can. Yes. But I think maybe many people they look at it and then they don't really understand it. They don't really understand how they can configure it and then adapt it, and then they just abandon it. And I think
Which
that's
is, I think, what happens with a lot of people, right? That are like, I'm not going to use this thing, forget it.
mm,
And and they even say it's like, who uses the product catalog? And for me, it's like, I've done it a bunch of times, and it can work. Now, not in every case you will be able to use the out of the box product catalog without customizing it and changing it a little bit. I'll give you
mm,
one example. One of the most recent projects that we just finished has a customer that is using the product catalog, but in their case, when they apply a discount, which they can negotiate as part of, that's how they've been doing business forever, they can negotiate a discount with the customer. There are certain products they cannot discount. They cannot discount because they have agreements with providers or distributors, whoever makes the products, where the products have a price. So they'll say something like, you must sell this for this price. Like some companies do that. Like I think, for example, Dyson. I'm just thinking about companies that are more global that people know about. You can't just discount Dysons for 50% off or whatever. Like you have to
mm,
sell them for
mm,
whatever they agree price, or you lose your distributorship, agreement or whatever capabilities. So, for this company, this customer that we just implemented for, they said, look, there are some products that need to be marked as, undiscountable. You cannot discount these. So even when they wanted to apply a discount at the opportunity level and say, okay, we have negotiated a 10% discount for this customer, some products would not be discounted. Well, the product catalog out of the box doesn't do that. If you apply a 10% discount at the opportunity level, all of the products are discounted. There's no, way to change that. Now
mm,
you could go product by product, line by line, and discount 10%, 10%, 10% on the ones that are applicable to. But if you want to do it from one central location at the opportunity level, we weren't able to do that. So we had to, essentially create a plugin that changed the way Dynamics works out of the box. So now when you add a 10% discount at the opportunity level, only some products are discounted. And the way we did that is I created a custom field at the opportunity level that says negotiated percentage or negotiated discount, something like that. You enter the number, let's say it's 10, and the plugin behind the scenes will replicate that value only to the line items for products that can be discounted. So there's a checkbox or whatever at the product catalog side that says, can this product be discounted, yes or no? So it checks for that. Can this product be discounted? If the answer is yes, it applies the 10% at the line item level. So we're still using the out of the box functionality, which is line item, but via the plugin we made it easy because now the customers just enter one value at the opportunity level that applies to the products that can be discounted and not to the ones that cannot.
yeah.
So I would say 90% of the functionality or more is out of the box product catalog, but it had to be customized a little bit in order to be able to use it, which again, some people might say, like, why do that? Why not just go with a CPQ solution? So talk about CPQ and where are the advantages of it? When should you use them and based on your experience.
Yeah, so CPQ is stands for so configure price. Sometimes I say quote. Is it not quote? It's for
Quote, yeah. Configurable price quote is what
configure
I
price
say.
quote. Okay, yeah, okay. I think it's yeah. Okay, whatever. It's what is it? It's a configurator for your quotes and orders and so on. So the point of doing this is that sometimes, and let's say that you're selling something a bit more complex. It might be a bicycle, for instance. It might be a car, and I mean, if you go into any car website, for instance, you go to Tesla's page or whatever, and you start saying like, okay, I want to build your car. You're actually going to go into a CPQ engine. Because what it has is that it has different rules between the different components. So if you start selecting, oh, I want this version, I want the premium, whatever, Tesla S or whatever, it's going to say, oh, but then this, you will automatically get this and this and that. And then you say, oh, but then I want these, I want this special version of the tablet or the dashboard stuff. And then it says, oh, but then you can't have the premium. You need to have this super premium version of this. And then so it has different rule sets between the different parts of that, and make sure that what you're actually put the quote that you're actually, or which is, I mean, you're assembling your quote yourself, right? You're not actually putting an order in, but you're getting a quote. That when you're getting that, that actually is a car that works. Because the problem is that if let's say that Tesla only had like a downloadable Excel sheet with all possible components in a Tesla as different just rows in that Excel sheet, and they told you, okay, so you want a Tesla, just put an X in every in the column like order in the columns you want, and then send it to us, and we'll create that. We'll tell you if there's anything's wrong. And then people are like, oh, okay, I want a bit of this and this dashboard and this dashboard, and I want this computer and so on. And they were like,
Right.
oh, but we can't build that. That doesn't work. And they will send back and you say, okay, but sorry, you just said this and that and this and that. And then it's okay. Oh, well, okay. So I want this and that instead. And then we like you have like an email loop that will be going on for 5 weeks until you actually will get the car that you want. Um, and this is something that people that are selling windows, people that are selling cars, people that are selling trucks, people that are selling trains, people that are selling alarms, people that are selling like everything that is a bit complicated and that needs some kind of configuration with interdependent components. Uh, they are using CPQs because it is
Yeah.
complicated to get it right and to get the pricing right, and making sure that what we're selling is actually works and can be delivered. And when we've and it works every way. And it's the same thing for telcos, for instance. So when you does it work from a technical perspective, and do we want to sell it this way? Because it might be that you can sell a new 5G telephone, and you can buy it with a 2G and then a subscription. But do we want to sell it?
Yeah.
Maybe they don't want to sell that together. They only want to sell the new 5G telephones with a 5G subscription, right? So you can actually put the SIM card, the 2G SIM card, into the 5G telephone, and it will actually make you can call with that, but it won't work. It won't. It's not. They don't want to sell that. It's not. It's not that what AT&T wants to sell. So it's something else, right? So it's there can be commercial decisions based on this as well. So there's like the CPQs have different levels. They can build. It's almost like building Legos. So they have like the lower parts of the Lego blocks, and then you build modules, and the modules are being assembled into larger components, and then you're like, okay, these are the entire boxes of Legos, and then you have like, oh, we have multiple boxes, and we sell them in bundles
Yeah.
together. Yeah.
Yeah, because when it comes to the product catalog and the relationship between products, we talked about earlier that we have bundles and we have families of products. Families are mainly used to essentially relate products that are part of the same family, like the new iPhone 12, for example. You have the iPhone 12 Pro, and they come with different storages, so you can create a family of iPhones, and then they have different characteristics between them, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Different descriptions and whatnot, options within them, and colors and all of that. And then bundles are a way for you to sell multiple products together, especially when they make sense. I personally like bundles when you have customers who are struggling to sell a product, for example, and they have another product that sells a lot. Creating bundles is one easy way to sell one of the products that are not selling as much, because you're selling it together with a product that does sell a lot more. So that's what those are used for. And then you have the idea of creating relationships between products. Like, for example, that you can say that a keyboard is an accessory to a computer and a monitor is an accessory to a computer. So you have accessories, you can cross sell or relate products in a cross sell capability, upsell capability as well. But there's nothing as complex as what you were talking about earlier, right? And it is true, when you're ordering a car, for example. Oh, I want seat warmers. Well, you need to have leather seats for that. So
Mm.
if you add leather seats, you don't have to get seat warmers if you don't want to, but if you get the seat warmers, you cannot remove the leather seats. When you want to enforce relationships like that, you're kind of forced out of the product catalog. The product catalog doesn't go that far. And I know that they have this functionality. I personally have never implemented in a project, so I'm not going to brag and say I've done it, but there is functionality which you can use, I believe, Azure, artificial intelligence to make suggestions and stuff. Gustav, have you seen this? Have you used this before?
Not, I haven't used the one in Azure. I've used
Hmm.
one that is for the telco. I think it was like CRM 4 times. It was quite a long time ago, we built an integration to that in CRM, as I mentioned, and it was rather complicated, we did it rather quickly, and it was a separate product outside of CRM.
Right.
And it was rather cool to do that, because I mean, what you can do with a CPQ is that you can actually start from, okay, so what is your requirements? What do you want? What are you looking for? So you can
Hmm.
start from that position instead of saying, okay, look, this is what we got in our product catalog. So you can
Yeah.
yeah, you don't have to start with like, look, this is all the technical stuff we have. You can start with, okay, so what is your desire, sir?
Yeah. For sure. And so the Azure stuff is supposed to make it work kind of like Amazon, where if you're adding products, it can suggest other products based on customers that bought the first product that you added, or other products that you've added, or
Okay,
customers like
yeah.
that. So it's like analyzing all this data, just like when you go to Amazon and say, here are some similar products that other people bought, based on what you're looking at right now. So that Azure connectivity is supposed to do that. I've only seen videos of it and demos and stuff. I haven't really implemented it in a project. So I have no idea how much it costs, how easy it is to implement and whatnot. But it's
I
supposed to be really cool.
Yeah, I fiddled around with a bit with AI, and I
Hmm.
think it sounds like that would need some kind of training to inference to do that, to train that kind of model
Yeah.
to your specific way of working. Maybe you can get a model that's pre trained a bit, so that you don't have to start from scratch. But it's still, you mean you need to have it to your specific product a bit, to train to your specific product model, product catalog a bit anyway.
Hmm.
So I think that sometimes that those kinds of concepts, this sound rather good, but still, I mean, and often what's needed is that um, you need to come up with some basic truth at the start anyway, or at some time anyway, saying, okay, look, this is what we can teach it with. This is what we've, like, look, this is like 10,000 rows of truth that we can train the model with. And you have to have that somewhere. Like, this is actually orders that we've made, or upsells that we did and that worked or didn't work, and we know that, and this column tells the result of if it was true or not, or if it worked or didn't work. So to be able to know what it was actually, what did work. So we have this order, and that order got upsell. We did an upsell to this other product based on that order. So you get my point.
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
Mhm.
You're right. And, again, all of these amazing functionalities out there for people to explore. But there is one thing, which is now that we're thinking about the fact that Dynamics 365 is not needed every time. So if you were talking about XRM solutions early on, for companies that are looking at creating their own model driven application and are not really thinking about getting the sales app and all of that, if they have a need for that. Like we were talking about Project Oakdale as well, where you can create some applications through Microsoft Teams. So you don't even use, Dynamics 365 at all. When does it make sense to invest the money to get the functionality versus build your own? So like if you have no intention of using sales, customer service and all of that, all you need is like some kind of product catalog. When do you recommend, look, I think we should really buy it versus let's just build it?
I mean, I think you should listen to what we talked about earlier. One of the main features we talked about here earlier is that we had the point of the product catalog we have here is that it's actually the same products that are being used in all of these three main apps, right? And that's rather hard to do yourself, to get that kind of cross app functionality built. You can't do that with your own, or it's at least you have to do a rather lot of work to be able to do that yourself. So I think, and there's lots of functionality built in around that. This, so I think if you're just doing a very small, limited functionality, you just want to have an opportunity, and you want to have, okay, this opportunity is about these products, and you don't really want to talk about, okay, how much is it about, or and to talk about
Discount lists and all that
quantities and
stuff.
pricing and so on.
Yeah.
It's more like, okay, we just want to know what products are we actually discussing with these customers in these opportunities, and you have a custom entity for opportunity and a custom entity for products. Okay, fine. I mean, then it's, you're doing it on such a high level. It's more like product areas, or more or less, that you're talking about.
Right.
So I think in those cases it's probably fine. But when you start going down into like doing the pricing and all that, it starts getting complicated rather soon, and you have to build a lot of functionality around actually doing the pricing. And especially if you're coming from the Project Oakdale perspective, in that it's, you're not getting, you're not, I mean, the reason is not that you think the product catalog is too weak, because that was what was the reason we talked about earlier, that people saying, oh, we can't do what we want it to do, so we're choosing to build our own that is more competent than the product catalog. In this case, we're talking about saying that, oh, we don't need all the functionality in the product catalog, so let's just build our own smaller version of the product catalog. So I think that might be the reason in that case. But I think there are cases for that. But I think it's mostly when you're like not doing pricing and not doing anything else like that.
Yeah, for sure. If you need something simple, don't do the whole Walt Disney thing and try to use what's there and put a sign on it. Just create your own. But if you need all the functionality, then for sure, it's hard to recreate everything that Microsoft has done, or recreate what other companies have done. Like maybe CPQ is the way to go. Just look into the requirements, what you're looking for, and try to make the best decision. Now, I do want to finish kind of this episode talking about the fact that when you do an implementation of Dynamics and you're going to be using the product catalog, for the most part, that organization that you're working with already has that product catalog somewhere else. They have it on an ERP system, they have it in some other custom system. So, can you talk a little bit about your experience importing data into the product catalog, maintaining that data in the product catalog as well, and then when it comes to integrations with ERP, what are some of the challenges that you've seen out there, for people listening to the show and saying, okay, like maybe we should, we're already having all of that in our ERP system and we're doing quotes and everything from ERP, but is there any way we could connect to it and maybe not use the product catalog, but show the information and be able to leverage it? So just talk a little bit about that, you know, data work, I guess, migration and integrations for the product catalog.
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing I just want to talk about the integrations first. I think I've done one implementation where we actually haven't done an integration with ERP when we have integrations with product catalog.
Exactly.
So that is when you do the product catalog, it is extremely common to have an integration with ERPs, to actually handle the order that you have created uh, over to the ERP system for further management. And there's a feature built into the CRM system where you say, "Oh, create an invoice based on this order." That's the only one time that we have actually used that functionality, where they actually where they create the invoice, and then what they did in that case was that what they actually, after they created the invoice, they sent the invoice to another system where they actually just managed it for bookkeeping. They didn't do any. They just handled. There was just a for bookkeeping, not for. They didn't do any invoicing or anything. They did the invoicing from the CRM system, and that was against my recommendations. So I didn't like that. But that that's how they wanted to do it. But the typical setup is typically to have an ERP system, or well, like Business Central or Finance and Operations, where you generate an order in the CRM system with the products in the order rows, and you integrate that over to the other system, and then that gets sent over. To be able to do
Yeah.
that, the ERP system is typically the master of the product catalog. It owns the products and it owns the prices, so that the products are managed and the prices are managed in the ERP system, and then they're integrated over to the CRM system. This will mean that, um, also when you're setting things up, and from a migration perspective, they are actually they're migrated to the ERP system first, and then you're actually not never migrating them into the CRM system. They're going to be created from the ERP system, and then pushed over to the CRM system that way. That might cause some issues, and I'm working with a system right now, and we've noticed that their data quality in the system is less than optimal, and which means that, for instance, the product catalog has duplicates, and that causes us to be able to have some issues. I don't think that this is due to some negligence. It's just like people are never born to know product catalogs,
Right.
um, and people need to understand that these are rather complex issues to manage, and for power users to know that they need to be taught how to work with this, from a in the people that work in the ERP systems need to understand how these land in the CRM systems and so on. So, and then they had created these products. Maybe sometimes they created new products for a campaign, for instance, and so on. They thought that was the right way to do it. So what happened was that, so they had multiple products, and what needs to be done now is that these duplicates need to be taken away, and that has to happen in the ERP system. These products need to move over. Um, so in a distinct fashion, meaning that we need to remove all the duplicates. So if you have two products, product A and product B, and then the product B, they're identical. Maybe we'll remove product B in the old system, or in the ERP system, and only
Yeah.
integrate over product A. However, when we're going to be migrating, for instance, old quotes, old orders, and stuff like that when we're doing the migration into the CRM system, we might be using both product A and product B.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
we are having dependencies on that. So we need to have a mapping that maps the product B to product A, and we need to do that as we move this data, and that requires rather complex migration scripting. So you need to think about that. So I think what you need to think about is that there's often the migration and the integration are connected in this case, in a typical fashion. So.
Yeah, that is true. And when it comes to the integrations, obviously the product catalog is typically not the only integration with ERP. You're integrating accounts, you're integrating, like you mentioned, orders, you're integrating, AR status. Do they owe us anything?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of credit they have available, all that stuff, it's coming through. The product catalog is just another thing. And I think when it comes to the migrations, like you said, they're kind of connected because in some cases, you know, dealing with a migration of product catalog data into Dynamics is complicated because of all these other moving parts: price list items, unit groups. Like you have all this stuff, and especially if the products that you have are related, right? Creating those relationships between them. Are they a cross sell, upsell, accessory? Stuff like that. That is very, very hard to do. So, in a lot of cases, the recommendation is to spend that time really honing on the integration. That way, the migration of data is actually part of the integration, the initial
Mm-hmm.
sync or transfer of data between ERP and Dynamics.
Yes, exactly.
Makes sense. All right, man. I think we've talked a lot about the product catalog. Is there anything else that you want to cover that you think we should cover today?
I think that we've been talking for quite some while now, so that we can talk for I can talk for 2 hours more about this if you like, but I think maybe people won't listen to us anymore.
Exactly, exactly. Well, if you're still listening to this, Gustav, if you can go ahead and share kind of contact information, where to follow you on Twitter, all that stuff. If they have any questions, for you.
Yeah, so I'm. You can find me at Serum Gustav on Twitter. You can also just search for my name and Gustav with an F, Westerlund on LinkedIn. You'll find me there as well. My company
Nice.
is serumconsulterna.se, where it's in Sweden. So you can find me there as well.
You have all of the MVPs from Sweden working right at Serum Consulterna. Is that right?
Yeah, currently. So
That's awesome. You guys are doing great. Great job, and thank you so much for joining the show today.
thank you. It's very nice to be here.
Absolutely, and thank you everyone for tuning in to the show. Please feel free to share this with all your friends and colleagues out there. Send us an email, info@crmmvppodcast.com, if you have any questions or comments for me or Gustav. You can always leave comments on the website, crmmvppodcast.com. Every episode, I see some people leaving comments there once in a while. If you want Gustav to be back talking about some other topic, please let me know. I'm sure he's always eager to jump in here and
Of
talk
course.
about anything.
Yes.
And I do feel with you. Like I'm always, we did those videos where it was like, so dynamics. I think you were the person that was most eager to be on the video. Like you want to be tested. You want to, go through those experiences where I feel some of the other MVPs every time I'm like, hey, can I ask you a question? They're like, nope, nope, not me. And you're always like, yeah, whatever. Like, what is it? you
Yeah. Yeah.
you always want to test yourself and your knowledge, and that all comes from doing this stuff for a living, just like I do. So
Yeah, and I like talking about this stuff because it's always interesting to sort of dig deep into these things and to always see if did I miss something? Is there something more I can learn about this? And
exactly.
I love learning more stuff about it. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, and thanks everyone for tuning in.